There is a rose in Spanish Harlem.
Today, we're going to show you what to do in Spanish Harlem, a.k.a. El Barrio. We'll be joined by another New York YouTuber who's Puerto Rican and will show us a legendary music store, some amazing Latino food, and the best places to see street art in East Harlem. Vamos! Hey everyone, it's Todd, and we are in Spanish Harlem. I am so excited to take you guys around this area, which really deserves a lot more attention, and we've got a great co-host for today's episode. He's Puerto Rican born, New York City raised. Here we go.
I'm a Nuyorican, which is a person raised in New York, and I'm excited to show you a little bit of Nuyorican culture.
We are going to start this tour of Spanish Harlem with something that every Puerto Rican I've ever met is really proud of. It's the music in the culture.
Music is crucial to Nuyorican culture. Of course, we have salsa, which took over the world in the 1970s, 80s, and so on. But also nowadays we have reggaeton, we have merengue, we have a huge array of music that has deep, deep Puerto Rican roots.
And Casa Latina Music is the most famous music store in Spanish Harlem, right?
Right, so we're about to go inside a store that has some of the best record collection and old school CDs and tapes from all those legendary artists that are Nuyorican.
This is the best music store in New York City, Latin, that is. It's the best, number one. I also work with Tito Puente, Tito Rodriguez, and Tito Puente he wrote his own music. Tito Puente arranged his own music. Nobody never did anything like that.
All right, if you are into Spanish-speaking music, Latin music, you are in heaven here. We were just talking to a musician. I mean, that's what this store is all about. It was about musicians coming together, having a community here. You know, things have slowed down a bit over the years. The owner was just telling us. But looking around, seeing all the autographs, this store is very unique. This is a real gem in New York City, trust me.
Here's Fania All-Stars, which are basically the most gigantic salsa band that took over in the 1970s. These guys really popularized salsa all around the world. So much so that they sold out Yankee Stadium in 1971, and also they sold out even concerts in Africa, which is kind of crazy.
Look, this is what he was talking about. Tito Rodriguez. This was the old Casa Latina before it was renovated.
Oh, all right, I almost got the beat.
Yeah, you did something.
There we go. There we go. You're born natural.
I used to play the violin as a kid.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did a little.
So you have some rhythm.
Probably not. I lost it all. Casa Latina Music, I mean, this type of store is a dying breed in New York City, just a true local establishment. Vicente, the owner, absolute history book. You come in there, you want to talk about Latin music, this is your spot. All right, Ariel, as we walk to our second stop on this video, I want to talk a bit of history. Now, it's called Spanish Harlem, but what a lot of people don't realize is that it was actually the first Little Italy in New York City, and at the turn of the 20th century, it was called Italian Harlem.
Right, it was called Italian Harlem, and then suddenly we had the Great Migration, a Gran Migración, which happened in the 1940s during World War II. A lot of jobs were needed, and the cheapest labor happened to be Puerto Ricans, so they were encouraged to come over here. Many did seek a new life here in New York City and settled here in what used to be Italian Harlem, and then quickly became Spanish Harlem, also known as El Barrio.
El Barrio.
Yeah.
Members of the Barrio.
No, exactly, like
like members of the Barrio.
like your community. So, the reason it was called El Barrio is because suddenly the neighborhood started becoming filled with bodegas. Now, you as a New Yorker,
of course,
probably heard the term bodega before.
Yes.
That comes from Puerto Rican community.
You know, I actually never thought about that till you just mentioned it.
Yeah, that little corner store,
yeah,
it's a Puerto Rican thing. Or especially the name, bodega. Here is a maestro de mambo. This is Tito Puente. who was a timbalero and also composer. And he wrote the famous song Oye Como Va, which a lot of people might think is a Santana song, but Santana actually covered it. Now, Tito Puente is basically worshipped in this neighborhood. He is known as the top of the top. He actually didn't like the term salsa. To him, he said, salsa is what I eat. I play mambo.
We're in front of El Chevere, and I'll be honest, I love Puerto Rican food. I have not had good Puerto Rican food since I was in Puerto Rico back in February, and when Ariel told me about this spot, I was so excited, so hungry. Why this restaurant?
Well, it's one of the very few remaining Puerto Rican food restaurants, even though it's not owned by Puerto Ricans. They have their mofongo and they have their Cuchifritos, which is part of the title. Here in this neighborhood, they used to be filled with huge restaurants and storefronts that would say Cuchifritos very loud, very in big letters. And that's basically the comfort food of Puerto Ricans. Everything super deep fried. Un pionono y un pastelillo de pollo, por favor. Dos jugos, sí. Uno tamarindo, uno pasta. All right, so we're starting here with the pionono, which is basically stuffed plantain. Delicious.
All right, I've never tried pionono before. I love it because it's a mixture of sweet, then as Ariel said, you get that savory meat flavor as well. Very, very good. I don't know how I never tried this in Puerto Rico. I'm disappointed in myself that I have to try this here first, but now I've got more to try when I go back.
There's just so many Cuchifritos in Puerto Rico that even I, as a Puerto Rican, have not tried all of them. This is the mofongo. Mofongo is basically the quintessential Puerto Rican dish, even though our brethren, the Dominicans, might claim it. This is fried plantain smashed with garlic, with lime or lemon, and also usually made with pork rinds. In this case, we're having roasted pork, which is pernil. And let's eat it as soon as possible.
This is my favorite food in Puerto Rico. I've had mofongo quite a few times. I am just super psyched to try this. I love mofongo so much. One of my top, I think, 10 foods I've ever had in my life. Listo? All right, let's do it. Roast pork's excellent.
You know that moment in Ratatouille where the camera zooms in? That's how I feel every time I have mofongo. It brings me right back to my childhood. Eating right by the beachside with a piña colada in hand.
It brings me back to my imaginary childhood in Puerto Rico. I didn't have a childhood in Puerto Rico, but if I did, I think this is what it would taste like. Just this soft, juicy roast pernil topped with the plantain.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Puerto Rico being a tropical country, there's awesome tropical juices. This is parcha, which is also known as passion fruit. And over here, what John has is tamarind, which is in Spanish is tamarindo, which also, if you are from India, you might be familiar with as well, because they're also in Indian cuisine.
I almost drank like 50% of this before we even started filming. So good. It tastes natural too.
So this is what's called a bacalaíto. Bacalaíto is basically little codfish. And it's basically fried codfish, but made with like a pancake-like batter. So also mixing sweet and savory.
You can be introduced to a world of new foods here in Spanish Harlem. Also never tried this before. You said there was fish in here. I can't even taste it.
Yeah, it's codfish, which usually has to be heavily salted. But since it's deep fried, it tastes awesome.
Yeah. No fishy flavor really for me at all.
And they're very generous with the codfish that they put in.
One of the things that really stands out to me about East Harlem, Spanish Harlem, is the amount of murals on walls, the amount of street art, and now we're standing in front of the Graffiti Hall of Fame, which is something that if you're visiting the area, I think you should put on your list.
Right, so many Nuyorican were involved in the graffiti movement of the 1970s, and by 1980, a graffiti artist by the name of Stingray opened this up, the Hall of Fame. So basically you can see all the top graffiti artists from that era here.
And a lot of it is inside of this school, so it's on both sides of this wall. We were discussing this, how the neighborhood's changed a lot, how there's only about 10% Puerto Rican population left, and while it's still Spanish Harlem, it's more Dominican and Mexican.
Right, there's a lot of Dominican, Mexicans, people coming from all around South America, but there's also a lot of Africans coming in, people from Senegal, and there's also more and more Chinese coming in. So the neighborhood is basically becoming very diverse, and you don't have that much of the spirit of Hispanic cultures as thriving as other neighborhoods.
Do you really feel the difference coming here today than coming here, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago when you were a kid?
Yeah, man. I mean, a lot of my family would joke around and say that New York City is the biggest pueblo of Puerto Rico. When you would come here to Spanish Harlem, you would see the huge Cuchifritos signs, you would see the people, older guys playing dominoes, yelling "Capicu," and you would hear the salsa music everywhere.
Yeah.
It was a very different vibe back then, in the 90s at least for me.
I think, you know, there's a small amount of spirit left, but speaking of spirit, look what we've just come to.
So this is the Spirit of East Harlem, which basically shows Puerto Rican life back in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, all the way to basically the 1990s. It's a great like throwback, at least for me and my family.
My tour company, guys, El Barrio Tours. Would you take an El Barrio tour?
I would, 100%, man.
You know, I'm curious. Looking at the mural here, which one's your favorite of all the people?
All the people. You know what? I love the older guys playing dominoes because of the yelling, the capicu, very loud. It's just so typical Puerto Rican.
I actually like the abuela, or as Ariel told me to pronounce her, the abuelita. I love just, it looks like she's preparing something.
He's definitely making some bacalaito. Oh yeah. Huge frying pan up there, covered in grease.
So Ariel, what would you tell to tourists visiting New York City about this neighborhood? Because I wouldn't call it necessarily a touristy place to come, even though there are things to do here.
Yeah, it's not so touristy, but it is rich in history. It's a little bit hard to see in the obvious way, but Nuyorican culture has had such a massive impact all around the world with salsa, with Latin music, with the likes of Jennifer Lopez and Ricky Martin and Mark Anthony. So there's a whole lot of history here. I just wish it was a little bit more visible.
Well, we had a great trip to Spanish Harlem, putting all the places we visited down below in the description. Check them out. And also check out Ariel's channel, The Urbanist. He does an amazing job exploring the hidden parts of New York, all that history, putting a card to him as well. Guys, smash that like button. Thank you so much for watching. As always, till next time.